YouTube? This is your friendly neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that's going on in the world of movies and TV. And guys, I'm back. I've kind of been taking these last couple months off because of college and lack of equipment and just pure laziness, but I'm back now, and I'm definitely going to be getting reviews out more so on hopefully a much more consistent basis than I was the last couple months. But I believe that the last film that I reviewed, at least for the purposes of this channel, was Thoroughbreds. So what this video is going to be is just going to be like a kind of a quick compilation of basically every movie that I've seen between that film and Tully, which will be my next review that comes out after this. So without further ado, here we go. These are about the, I don't know if it's 7, 8, 9, I don't remember, but these are just all the films that I've seen and my quick thoughts on each one of the films that have come out between Thoroughbreds and now. So here we go.
Do you trust me? I trust you!
A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay as her big-budget follow-up to Selma and her documentary that she directed for Netflix 13th, and ye gods! So, I heard that this movie was bad coming from every single different critic that I saw, or that I follow, but Jesus Christ, I was not expecting it to be this bad. Holy fuck! So, the good thing that I can say about it, though, is that it was one of those movies that, one of those bad movies, I should say, because this movie is bad, don't get me wrong, that is just so bonkers and batshit that if you're in the right mindset, and by mindset I mean go into this movie intoxicated in some way, then you will definitely get a lot of enjoyment. Mostly bad performances, if not just like weird batshitty kind of all over the place. You got Reese Witherspoon doing weird buggy eyes. I'm not going into the plot of this movie because I barely remember what the plot of this movie is. Something about Storm Reid is another precocious child genius or whatever, and her dad disappears because he's experimenting with, like, traveling across the universe through the power of love or some bullshit like that. And then as a result, she gets chosen, well, I shouldn't say chosen, her and her best friend, who really obviously has a crush on her, and her younger brother, who, I'll get into him, are picked by these three, entities across the universe, played by Mindy Kaling, Reese Witherspoon, and Oprah Winfrey. I don't remember what their names are because that's all I know them as. All I know is Reese Witherspoon has weird buggy eyes throughout the movie. Oprah Winfrey, Ava DuVernay is basically trying to personify her as a goddess as much as she can because it is very, very apparent. Well, because this movie also came out like around the time that she was making her like rousing presidential speech at the Golden Globes, and Mindy Kaling is just dropping weird pop culture references throughout the entire thing. It makes no sense. The point being that, so the entire movie is just them bouncing around from location to location to location, going on random weird adventures, trying to find her dad, who's played by, in a very tender, endearing performance by Chris Pine. Really wish that he'd had more screen time because, good God, that guy, he is slowly becoming one of my favorite actors every time that I see him. But yeah, this movie is just batshit, like, in the best ways possible. Like, the CG is bad, but at the very least, it's pretty, and Like the overall mess, I have no idea what the overall message of it is. Power of love, it's the same bullshit you've seen over and over again, and so some of the performances are pretty good. I like when Michael Pena and Zach Galifianakis show up. They're actually pretty good in their tiny little parts that they have. I thought Zach Galifianakis was going to be really annoying from the trailers, but he surprisingly wasn't. But yeah, this movie just had no idea what it wanted to be. Like, no idea at all. And some of the performances, like, good God. So, I actually thought Storm Reid was actually pretty good, but her two supporting kids that were there, good God. So Levi Miller, I fucking hated him in this movie. Like, everybody's been complaining about the younger brother, but for me, the reason why I hated him the most is because he was doing that thing in the movie where it's like a 12-year-old kid or whatever that is talking like an adult throughout the movie, and I hate it when kids do that in movies. That's why I hated him in the movie. Everybody that I heard hated the little brother, and he's bad, don't get me wrong, but probably the thing that got me through his performance is just the fact of when he goes all out, and don't get me wrong, he goes all out, like, because halfway through the movie, he, like, gets possessed by the evil that they're trying to defeat, which is just, like, every 2000s evil dark cloud, and he, like, goes so over the top that it's completely hilarious to look at. I'm talking, like every, like, hilarious child actor that you've ever seen just try to be evil, but it not working at all. Like, that's what it goes to, but it all resolves itself nice and evenly through the power of love and all that bullshit. And yeah, my only recommendation for this movie is if you are going to watch it as stoned out of your mind as you possibly can, because that's how I watch it, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of it.
What do we do?
Y'all remember me? We fight! Over those on top of me.
Pacific Rim Uprising. Yeah, pretty much the first one. I don't really even need to go in depth in this in order to describe all of these movies' problems because it's exactly the first one. If you saw the first one, you saw this. Just way less fun, way more generic. Different lead. Like I said, that's probably the one improvement that this movie does have over the originals. I like John Boyega as a lead more than I like Charlie Hunnam, but the first movie I enjoyed so much, I don't even care that much. This movie was just bland and forgettable. Except for two major things that stood out to me that just made me sad above all. Number one, the entire twist is they make Charlie Day the villain, which for some reason it seems like everybody that I follow online is on this Charlie Day hate train, which I don't understand because I love Charlie Day. I've loved him in every single thing that I've seen him in. Everybody kind of gets annoyed by his over-the-top mannerisms that he puts into every one of his performances. I like that. It's one of the things that I find makes him an endearing actor and makes his characters way more endearing, but I guess that's just me. But I liked him so much in that first movie. He was just another goofy facet whose heart was in the right place of that first movie that made that first movie so great. And this one, they make him the bad guy. Not only did they make him the bad guy, but they kind of make him this arrogant, obnoxious prick, too, out of nowhere, which kind of really takes away from what made him so endearing in the first one. And then, as if stealing from the first movie wasn't bad enough, no joke, this movie's ending, almost word for word, is exactly the same ending as Independence Day Resurgence. Like, I kid you not. I'm not going to tell you because I don't care enough, but for everybody that actually remembers the ending of Independence Day Resurgence, I'm talking the last, 2 seconds before the cut to black to credits, this movie is exactly that. Like, I'm not even kidding.
I'm not crazy!
He's here. Or maybe it's all in my head.
Unsane, and with this film, Steven Soderbergh is officially back. Well, not technically, because he kind of made his comeback last year with Logan Lucky, which is a film that I still enjoyed, even though it definitely didn't measure up to what I thought it was going to be, because the trailers made that film out to be a lot more slapsticky than what it really was. But, this film, on the other hand, holy crap, I loved this movie. Claire Foy, first of all, powerhouse friggin' performance. I've never watched a single episode of The Crown, so I had no idea what to expect from her going on, but she was absolutely spectacular. This film being shot on an iPhone thing, it was a little bit distracting at first, but I got used to it as the film went on, and the second half of this film is definitely significantly weaker than the first half, especially because it kind of goes off into two different storylines so the whole premise is that because she believes that she's seeing a stalker, she goes to a psychiatric hospital and she signs some forms, but she unintentionally commits herself without actually realizing it, and then she ends up finding out from Jay Farrow, who plays another inmate in there, which he's spectacular in this movie, that the whole hospital is an insurance scheme. But then it turns out that her stalker is actually, and then she starts seeing her stalker at the hospital as one of the hospital workers, and so you're not sure if she's crazy or if he's actually there and she's actually in danger. But for while there's that uncertainty, the movie is really, really spot on. And like I said, it kind of goes off the rails at the end because the hospital storyline kind of ends up resolving herself, and she ends up resolving the whole thing with her stalker. But it still doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the movie. I still think this was an immaculately made movie. It was one of the best thrillers I've seen probably in a while. Like I said, powerhouse performance from Claire Foy and from Jay Farrow too. And Steven Soderbergh just shows that not only is he back, but he is once again kind of doing that thing that he was doing when he first retired from mainstream filmmaking, which is that he really wants to experiment with the medium and really see if he can do different things with it. Because I remember his whole big project that he announced before he made a kind of his comeback was this kind of TV thing that he was doing called Mosaic, where it's an HBO series, but if you don't like the way that the story is going, you can go onto the app that was released in conjunction with the TV series, and you can pick your own adventure. So, not all of it is a success, and I'm not sure if all of what he's trying to do speaks necessarily directly to me, but I enjoy what he's doing, trying to further the medium, and I really, really enjoyed the films that he is doing, because between Logan Lucky and Unsane, it shows that this guy has not lost any of the creative talent that he had previously, directing such films as Ocean's 11, obviously one of my favorite caper films, The Limey, Traffic, so many different films. So yeah, Unsane, big thumbs up.
Like many of you, I only came here to escape. But I found something much bigger than just myself. Are you willing to fight?
Help us save the Oasis.
Ready Player One. Now this one's a big one, and I was really mad when I didn't get to do a review for it, but like I said, lack of technology, I already explained myself. So this film, I shouldn't need to explain the plot because this was a huge mainstream hit, so I feel like everybody would have seen this by now, and yeah, it was enjoyable, most definitely enjoyable, and probably the biggest fault that I did to myself before I watched this was reading the book. Now, that's what I've done with a couple of different properties beforehand. Like, I read American Gods before I got into that, and that actually helped me enjoy that series even more than I already did, because with me, what I usually find when I'm watching book-to-film adaptations is usually a 50-50 thing, where either reading the book beforehand either really exceeds my enjoyment of it, even more so beforehand, which is kind of like what happened with me with Game of Thrones, or it can seriously detract from my love of it, and that's kind of what happened here, where a lot of the flaws that people had with the film, they also had with the book, which I apparently never had because I loved the book when I read it. But watching the film, I definitely felt like, I'm not quite sure if it was a thing of where this just did, some certain elements just didn't translate well to film, or if they just deliberately changed it for the purpose of filmmaking. But the point being that I enjoyed a lot of the Oasis, first of all, visual marvel. Like, the CG in this movie is absolutely mind-boggling and spectacular, and it's probably the first time that I've seen since The Jungle Book where the CG wasn't distracting to me because the uncanny valleyness of it is, because they're not supposed to look real, they're supposed to look fake, because for a majority of it, they're in an AI, a virtual world. They're not in the real world. So I really enjoyed that. Also, some pretty good performances, too, specifically from Olivia Cooke, Lena Waithe, who I still say was perfect casting for that character. How her performance actually turned out, that's a different thing, but that initial casting, though, absolutely brilliant. And Ben Mendelsohn and Simon Pegg, even though they are unfortunately wasted, they still do give good performances. It's just Simon Pegg, good God, for anybody who read the book, you'll know that there was an entire, that character that he plays at least is supposed to be the entire last act of that movie, and good God, they gave him the shaft for this movie. But yeah, Ty Sheridan as the lead, he didn't completely piss me off. Like, I enjoyed what I saw at the beginning, but still probably wasn't the best casting to begin with. It really is kind of harkening back to an old school era of filmmaking that, for the most part, Hollywood is left behind, where to make somebody a nerd, you just stick a pair of glasses on anybody, and there are a decent amount of actors that I probably would have put for that part that would have come to mind first before Ty Sheridan. But yeah, the thing that probably lacked for me the most is this definitely didn't feel like it had the Spielberg magic that I'm used to. And maybe it's just because Spielberg just isn't the type of filmmaker that he used to be, and there's also the fact that a majority of the films that he's done this decade really haven't been that good. Of the few films that I've seen, I'm really not a big fan. Bridge of Spies was whatever. The Post fucking sucked. I didn't even bother with the BFG. And from what I've heard, Tintin's good, though, and I still haven't seen Lincoln, but with that movie, it's either 50-50. People either love that movie or they hate it, but that's kind of the start of where Spielberg kind of started to go, like, more so into these really low-key political dramas, and it just, it really is sad, because Spielberg is still one of my favorite directors, but it is always sad for me to see a director kind of, not lose his touch, but definitely not turn out efforts that are as strong as some of his previous ones, and I'm not going to go too far into the differences between the film version and the book version, but for me at least, like I said, because I'm finding things that with the book that I was able to find that the book went really deep with that apparently were never there in the first place, so maybe that's just me, but I found that there was a lot more depth that you could have gone into, at least that I thought that the book went into, that the film just never did. And certain sequences that they changed around, I wasn't entirely mad because they were changed around for the purposes of a mainstream audience, and some of the, like that book goes so goddamn obscure with those 80s pop culture references that mainstream audiences might not get it. But yeah, it was certainly an enjoyable time at the theaters, but definitely not the magic that I was hoping for. Never Really Here, directed by Lynn Ramsey, the director of We Need to Talk About Kevin, a film from 2011 that I still have not seen, but I've heard a lot of good things about. So, this film, definitely not for a mainstream audience. It stars Joaquin Phoenix as a hitman, sort of, that kind of like goes on this quest to rescue this little girl. But it's very artsy, it's very out there. The film is much more so like a psychological look into his head without actually saying anything. Well, without him actually stating anything at all, because there is barely any dialogue in this entire movie. But from what I gathered from it, the general gist is that it looks like So there's a couple flashbacks to his childhood where it shows like kind of what he kind of clues you in as to the reason why he does what he does, and it all goes back to a couple of arguments that his parents had when he was a kid. But you got to assume that there's more to it because like he specifically goes after girls that are like victims of like sexual assault, and like when he's going to rescue this one particular girl in instance, he's going through this entire building and it's all shot really weird. It's like all shot to like not to show the actual action itself, but to kind of show like the aftermath of the action, which is really kind of intriguing and weird, and it's a new angle that I haven't seen before, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, for the most part, this isn't a film that I can really recommend, only because it really isn't about anything to say. That's not to say it isn't an enjoyable watch, and Joaquin Phoenix is absolutely spectacular in the part, but if you really think about it, every single actual plot point that's like even resembles anything of a story kind of just gets tossed aside on the wayside, because like when he finally rescues the girl gets kidnapped again, and then he's like kind of piecing everything together in his head, but even then it sort of doesn't make sense. I'm not really going to delve into the plot because like I said, the film, it definitely could be regarded as like an artsy schmartsy movie, but I really enjoyed it from what I saw. But yeah, definitely not something that I would recommend for mainstream audiences. Like, oh man, like what was it like? And then there's this really weird sequence in the middle where where his mom's been killed, and so he like is going down with her. Like it's very much about like psychological abuse. The only problem is the film really doesn't give us a reason as to why he would be psychologically abused. Just like, yeah, he saw his parents arguing, but like would it affect him like that bad? Like there just seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between what I'm seeing and what the film is telling me. So that's kind of the only thing, which I usually don't have a problem with mainly visual based films like this one, but in this instance I need a little bit more. It's very, very enjoyable to watch, extremely well made, beautiful performances all around. The ending kind of makes no sense, but again, it kind of just goes on with the tone of this entire movie. So yeah, recommend sort of. A Quiet Place. Now, this is a film that got a ton of buzz when it first came out for a ton of different reasons, and me just looking at it as a film, alright, it's pretty good. Beautifully well made, technically, though. Like, I one of the biggest reasons for me why I was going to watch this film was because it was shot near my hometown, so obviously I'm going to have a personal attachment. I actually live, like, 40 minutes away from New Paltz, which is where this was shot, but, obviously that Krasinski, he was directing this, and as opposed to everything the marketing was saying, this is not his directorial debut, but this is the first, like, mainstream, big-budget movie that he's doing, and like I said, technically, it's amazingly well made. Like, this is technically the first, because of what this film is going for, it's the first silent film, like, in a while. Well, like, since the 20s and 30s when silent films first kind of went out of fashion. Like, so the entire premise is that it's a family that is living in this post-apocalyptic world that is ravaged by these creatures. They don't tell you where these creatures come from. All they know is that they feed based off of sound. And if they make even a little bit of a noise, boom, the creatures come in and they kill. The opening scene establishes that right away in a brilliant manner, I think, because like I'm not a sicko. I don't like seeing kids murdered on screen, but like every time for the past couple that I've seen done on screen, they've done it really well. And so whenever I see a child murdered on screen, like, and it's done really well and really effectively for the purpose of the story, like, I always get like a little giddy feeling. I don't know if that says anything about me as a person and how fucked up I am, but whatever. The point is that like I said, I couldn't really get invested in this movie like as much as I probably would have wanted to, simply for the fact of outside of the technical scale, because the sound design, the cinematography, it's all gorgeous. Like, this movie just doesn't have that investing sense of a story to me, because every single survival story that I've seen always feels like it has to follow these cliches, and outside of those cliches is always what I form my basis of my opinion on with these movies, of what they can do outside of the cliches. And with this movie, it's just the characters just make so many dumb decisions. Like, first off, I'm sorry, I don't care how many times they do it in properties, it is never, ever a good idea to get pregnant in an apocalypse of any kind. I don't care, like, what the reason is, what the moral justifications are, of like, oh, we have to continue the race, or whatever. Like, I don't care. Having a baby in an apocalyptic situation is stupid, Don't do it. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is they kind of like break their own rules when it comes to how much noise they can make. It's like, okay, so a lamp breaking, that doesn't attract them, but freaking like they don't really specify it. And obviously the nail thing, that was dumb, and how as careful and pristine as he was, like they didn't do that. He didn't pay close enough attention to that. And the whole thing with the daughter, I thought was just dumb. Like, the actress did fine. Cool that she's deaf, so they got that as accurate as they possibly could. But, like, I'm sorry, like, teen angst in apocalypses is another thing that I just don't care for at all, because it's so dumb. Because it's like, that's the one time where it's like, okay, can you please, for the love of God, put aside all your personal bullshit and understand that the world around you is constantly trying to kill you, and you actually have to contribute in order to survive. And the fact that they still have teens that have all those teen angst and don't kill them off immediately always angers and frustrates me. So that was another thing to keep in mind. Also, the ending of this movie, good fuck was that dumb. Like, I know that they're supposed to be, like, encouraging you, just like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight back now, but the circumstances that lead to it still really don't make sense. It's like, okay, so what, they just so happen to accidentally find a thing that can kill these creatures, and it's like, why don't you show us that? And the CG, it's not horrible, and they definitely use it in the best capacity that they can, but it still definitely doesn't make the creatures as scary as they could be, and it really is, for me, just a concept of a movie that is beautifully, technically well made, but it's kind of a little bit like Dunkirk, where it doesn't have the emotional resonance with me, and I don't really find myself it appealing to me as much as a lot of other movies do.
Ends when all the players are dead. And your turn's next.
Dare me to choose which one of you to kill.
Truth or Dare, the next film from Blumhouse, and the film that seems to be more of an older Blumhouse film than kind of like in this newer track record that they're doing, where Blumhouse has kind of been shocking the world in the last couple of years with not only making films for obviously as cheap as they can, but also making some awards caliber films, obviously with Whiplash and Get Out, and also for making horror movies in the cheap that are actually pretty friggin' good, like Split. But this one, I definitely didn't hate this as much as everybody else did, but it definitely is kind of back in their old wheelhouse of being like very, very generic, not very good actors, very kind of cliched, teen romp actors, a lot of teen melodrama bullshit in this movie. Good God, a lot of teen melodrama in this movie, but I didn't hate it. I didn't think that it was anything remotely special, but I also didn't hate it. I thought it was a cool concept. They definitely kind of broke the rules of their concept a lot, though, but in terms of like establishing the like, okay, so it's a trickster god deity of some kind who's established these very specific rules until it doesn't suit them. For me, at least, it didn't. The Jack Nicholson face, I'll call it, because it's like stretching. Because whenever the demon comes out, like whenever they like refuse to do the truth or dare, and like they do the weird smile like this, and then it causes them to kill themselves and whatever like creative means that they come up with. It didn't bother me as much because it's like, okay, it's a trickster god. He's gonna, all that he does is he just delights in killing people. So whatever rules he set up, he's gonna find a way to get around them and break them. That's probably why that didn't bother me as much. And the ending, at the very least, I know that's another thing that pissed off a lot of people. The ending for me didn't bother me as much also because it kind of went more so in line with just kind of like how fucked up this movie was, where it's like, okay, so as a response to all of their bullshit teen melodrama that they have, the teens do some kind of like really, really effed up shit in the process. And so it kind of like translates that message as like, well, they kind of got themselves into this situation because they were dumb and because this entire thing has been fucked up. So yeah, why not just spread it to the world? Why not? I also don't hate Lucy Hale in this. I really thought I was going to, but I thought that for the most part she was pretty good. And like I said, my biggest problem with this movie is the teen melodrama, but it's still an entertaining watch. I still enjoy like all the creative ways that they come up with to kill off all the teens. It's like a Final Destination movie. I go into that movie, I'm not expecting anything quality. I'm just expecting a lot of really creative ways to kill teens. Like they expressly tell you, like, okay, this is what it's like. It's like what. They do what every other horror thriller like this doesn't do, where it's like, okay, where at least they own up to the fact of like, okay, we only exist so that we can kill off teenagers, so we're just gonna do it in the most creative way possible. And some of these deaths, some of them were dumb for sure, and a lot of it was, good God, like I said, there was so much melodrama in this movie, I almost felt like, hey, did they bring in Greg Berlanti and have him like write like a portion of the script? Because this movie does have 4 writers, so Yeah, probably the only... I didn't have a problem with any of these other performances, but probably the one that pissed me off the most and, like, really made me angry is Violet Bean in this movie, who, for all of you CW fans out there, will know her as Jessie Quick from The Flash. And she was probably the only one that was, like, really egregiously annoying, because even in certain scenarios, it was like, okay, come on. Like, really? Can you let go of your melodrama for 5 goddamn seconds? But yeah, not a great movie, not one that I would recommend, but I enjoyed watching it.
Truth or dare?
Wow. Isle of Dogs. Another installment from the lovable Wes Anderson with all of his quirky charms, mannerisms, symmetrical shots, and everything. If you know who Wes Anderson is like as a director at this point, you know exactly what you're getting here. And if you're a fan of his, then you're going to love this movie. And if you're not a fan of his, well then, tough shit. You just, like, don't appreciate good filmmaking. I'm kidding. I'm sure Wes Anderson has his haters out there just like everybody else does. But yeah, I love this movie. But that's the thing. Wes Anderson has established himself that he does have one very consistent tone, one very consistent writing style, one very consistent filmmaking style. And this film is basically a continuation of that. And like I said, if you love that, you're going to love this, and if you don't, then you're not. It's just that simple. I've loved everything that I've seen from him, so I loved it. I thought the motion capture was great. Not motion capture, oh my god, this was not motion capture at all. This was a stop motion. The stop motion animation was great. The voiceover cast, all spectacular. Like, he has like 700 different amazing actors in this movie, and he utilizes them all spectacularly. Because that's the type of guy that Wes Anderson is. Whenever he's only done one other animated film before, but I already knew that, like, yeah, Wes Anderson is not the guy that just gets random celebrities to hook in random voiceovers. If he gets a celebrity, he's gonna use their voice properly, and he does. And he's got and he does here. He's got a bunch of different collaborators that he's worked with previously: Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, Ed Norton, Bob Balaban, Frances McDormand pops up in this, Tilda Swinton, Greta Gerwig, who I believe this is her first collaboration. MVP scene stealer in this entire movie, though, is Bryan friggin' Cranston. He is absolutely fantastic, kind of the journey, the struggle that he goes through, and kind of the little whimsical adventure that he goes on with the kid. Don't get me wrong, that this film is absolutely bonkers with the types of adventures that it goes on, and it's really bad, though, because throughout this entire movie, I couldn't help thinking that, like, okay, is this Wes Anderson's apology for killing off a dog in every single one of his previous movies? I just had that as, like, a weird thought at the back of my mind. But this movie's great. And another thing that I really appreciate that he did in this film is every time he really wanted to show the emotion on these dogs' faces, he did an amazing job of that, because what he does is he focuses the camera up really close on their face, and he shows, like, the tears coming down their eyes. And it really, really does show you just, like, the humanity that these dogs have more than anything else for an animated film. And that's probably what drove this film home even harder for me with all the heart that I did. It's a delightful movie. You can take your kids to see it, but it's also just perfect for all the adults. Other standout voiceover performances, if I had to say any, were probably Ed Norton and Liev Schreiber, which Liev Schreiber was a guy who probably got the shaft end when it came to the marketing, because his dog character is not part of the pack of initial 5 dogs, but he still does a magnificent job with his dog's whole kind of little side quest and how he connects to Cranston and the kid and everything. But yeah, really enjoyed it, really, really loved it. Fun, charming, animated adventure. Thumbs up.
To the north, a long, rickety causeway over a noxious sludge marsh leading to a radioactive landfill polluted by toxic chemical garbage. That's our destination.
Great.
Got it.
Get ready to jump.
You know there are other ways of dealing with people, right?
I do know that, yeah, but that's no fun.
Rampage. Now, this is a film that I probably shouldn't have to talk that much about, because if you saw the trailer, you know exactly what you're getting. Like, that's all I can say about it. Like, the people who love this are gonna love it, and the people who hate it are gonna hate it. Like, this is clearly not a film that's made to be, you know, le film or anything like that. It's very clearly just the next big, dumb rock blockbuster. Giant gorilla, giant dog, giant alligator, all battling it out in Chicago. I have no idea about anything that this film is based on in terms of the video game that this film is based on, because I don't play video games and I don't really care. I got exactly what I wanted out of this movie. I got giant animals fighting each other. I got The Rock getting to do some cool shit. And probably if I had to say that I was lacking anything from this movie, it would be that I was kind of hoping for it to be a lot more goofy and self-aware and not as, like, melodramatic, because there were a ton of melodramatic moments in this. Like, they try to do this whole side plot with Naomi Harris. I'm like, I don't care about that. Get back to the giant animals beating the shit out of each other. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan, they may as well have taken him out of Walking Dead and just plopped him in here, but everybody already knows that at this point. Anybody with 2 brain cells who watched the trailer would know that. And Malin Ackerman and Jake Lacy. I feel kind of bad for Jake Lacy in this movie because I'm still watching him on I'm Dying Up Here, and he's still spectacular on that. And he's really wasted here, and the two of them just act like cartoon villains, which is what they are. Although how they both die is kind of hilarious. And yeah, the end fight and with the giant monsters duking it out in Chicago, it's absolutely everything that anybody was expecting. I really can't talk that much about this movie because if you saw the trailer, you know exactly what this movie is. And anybody who goes into this movie, they're going to get exactly what they expect.
George? You okay? Ready to do this, buddy?
Oh, yeah. I don't sound like that. You do a little.
The week of, the last in the Adam Sandler, Happy Madison Netflix deal that they signed back in 2015, which started with the infamously remembered Ridiculous Six, and it concludes here. And probably Happy Madison's best effort that they've done so far this decade, which is certainly a gigantic compliment going their way, considering the shit they've given us but still, unfortunately, not a good movie. Adam Sandler is surprisingly down to earth, and I actually do relate to him a lot in this movie, even though the comedy antics that he does, and the film does feel really one-track and repetitive, kind of over and over again, but I do sympathize with his character and what he's trying to go for, and it is probably like, I really like that Adam Sandler is kind of getting back to his acting roots and actually trying to play characters again and not doing all the stupid comedy shit that he's been doing, because Adam Sandler is a guy who is a legitimately good actor. The Meyerowitz Stories was not a fluke, so, and I'm hoping that he does more, not necessarily movies like this, but more performances like this going forward between both his comedic and his dramatic work, and I kind of just hope that he sticks more on the dramatic side. But yeah, Chris Rock, surprisingly not in this movie as much as I thought he would be, but whenever he's in it, he's spectacular, and the back and forth between Adam Sandler and Chris Rock is great, and whenever they have one little moment at the end that's really tender and endearing about how they kind of like compare their parenting styles, and but overall, yeah, this film, like I said, it's very low-key and down-to-earth, which I appreciate from Happy Madison, but it's still not that great a film. Like, at a certain point, I was like, okay, I've seen this already. Can we just, like, get to the wedding already? It's your typical wedding from hell movie, where it's like, oh, they got a wedding that's happening, and then everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong, and I can't tell if they're trying to do anything relatively new with this concept, or if they are just trying to do, like, a generic movie, but whatever the case may be, it doesn't stand out to me. Like I said, if you're into Adam Sandler, for whatever reason, after the last, 15 terrible movies that he's given us, you'll probably enjoy this. Like I said, it is a very low-key, down-to-earth movie, and it does have its fair share of sweet moments.
Okay.
As all things should be. I hope they remember you.
To wrap it up, the big one, the Avengers Infinity War. I already did a gigantic hour-and-a-half long podcast breaking this movie down, spoiler-filled completely, so I've already talked about this movie in nauseum, so I'm just gonna give my quick, brief thoughts on it. Holy shit, Marvel completely delivered on absolutely everything that they said they would, because like I said, Marvel's just been getting so many complaints over the last years. Some of them are justified. Some of them I still feel are just people that are jealous of their success and their popularity. Of like, oh, no stakes. Oh, they're not killing anybody off. Oh, they keep repeating all the same story tropes and mantras over and over and over again. And like I said, some of those arguments are justified. But after a while, honestly, the people complain about how the DC fanboys keep making excuses for those movies, which are, for the most part, pretty bad. Honestly, I was getting more sick of the Marvel people who were hating on it, because it's like, come on, guys. It's like, you know what you're gonna get at this point, so if you don't like it that much, just don't see it. It's that simple. Just don't fucking see it. But yeah, for me, as the giant Marvel fanboy that I am, even I was starting to get a little bit sick of their previous efforts, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Spider-Man. Thor Ragnarok I warmed up to, even though I didn't like that movie the first time I saw it, and Black Panther obviously was a breath of fresh air. Loved everything that movie did, but this movie, good freaking God, just as a Marvel fanboy, well, as a Marvel film, as a regular film, as a superhero film, good freaking God, this movie just checked off every single cylinder. The action was great, the character meetups, all there, exactly what you would have possibly wanted. The deaths, because, like I said, that's not really a spoiler, because that was kind of to be expected going into this film. When they hit, good freaking God, they hit, because like I said, this is a point that's been brought up by a lot of other people, but it is a true point because Marvel has done the impossible where they have this film where none of the characters really have these incredible arcs, but you still care about and are invested in each and every single one of these guys because they have been built up and because you have been keeping track of them throughout all the 10 years, the 19 movies that you have seen them. And good freaking God, Thanos. Oh my God. Like, first, like, it really is becoming more and more apparent to me that this Marvel Creative Committee that I've been hearing so much about in the last couple of months specifically, that was run by Ike Perlmutter, that was kind of dissolved in 2015 when Feige and Perlmutter had that giant falling out right around the time the Age of Ultron was coming out, that, yeah, they're kind of responsible for the reason why Marvel villains had sucked up to that point, because everything, I would say, Ultron afterwards, with the exception of 2. Yeah, 2. Because I love Vulture in Spider-Man. Point being that their villains have, for the most part, I would think improved, specifically with Black Panther, because Killmonger in that movie was absolutely spectacular, and I'm still not convinced that he was a bad guy in that movie at all, because in terms of the moral argument, he was completely 100% right, and his moral argument, being so right as it was, is actually what forced Black Panther in that movie to undergo the dynamic growth that he did. But beside the point, Thanos, what this movie does brilliantly, and the reason why I would put Thanos to pay above Killmonger, in terms of being a villain, is because Killmonger, like I said, he was just so sympathetic in everything that he did and all of his actions, and since all of his moral arguments for why he was doing what he was doing were so justified that I didn't even see him as a villain, versus Thanos was still 100% a villain, and he established that first and foremost. You got all the development and the backstory and his connection with Gamora and all of his emotional reactions, and you understood the reason why he was doing what he was doing, but he was still a villain through and through. But the interesting thing about this movie, and again, another thing that Marvel promised they would do that they surprisingly held up with, is this was his movie. This was 100% Thanos' movie. If it wasn't a motion capture performance, I would say Josh Brolin is the lead for this movie, for sure, because this movie is about Thanos. It starts with him, it ends with him, and aside from this being a very obvious part 1 for the part 2 of Avengers coming, I'm not going to spoil the ending for all of you people out there who still haven't seen it, all the 5 of you that there are, but it does make sense in terms of if you look at this as a Thanos story versus if you look at it as another Avengers movie. But with all the Avengers, like all the character meetups are great. Thor, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot, I could watch them go on space adventures all goddamn day and night. Downey Jr. still kicking it off great. It's also really nice to finally see him get some vindication for a lot of the actions that he's gotten flack for in the previous movies, or one of the biggest things with Ultron is like, oh, why would you do this? Why would you do this? Why would you make this? Oh my God, stop experimenting with shit. You do nothing but fuck shit up. And with him, he's like, guys, you thought that attack in New York was the only thing? Like, they're gonna be coming back, and I'm just trying to prepare for it. And so, I kind of like him getting some vindication, because so many of the previous movies have been proving about how Tony Stark, despite what he's trying to do, is wrong, and I'm glad that he has finally proven right, even though his plan still doesn't work, but that's not his fault. Yeah, and the other interesting thing that this movie does is, even though this film has every single character established at this point in the MCU, every mainstream character for the most part, even ones that I wasn't necessarily a biggest fan of, they still managed to do a surprisingly good job of making me care about each and every single one of them. Even Doctor Strange, who I couldn't have given less of a shit about, because I thought that his solo movie is one of the worst MCU movies to date, in terms of just being bland and boring. But, Star-Lord in this movie, oh man, like I said, everybody in this movie I thought impressed me. Everybody was perfectly well utilized. They really structured it perfectly well in terms of having everybody go off on their little side quests. But if I had to pick one detriment, it would be Chris Pratt. And I'm not talking about the thing that he does in that movie. That's a writing thing. I'm just talking performance-wise, because for me at least there's been a significant difference between the Chris Pratt that we saw in the first Guardians of the Galaxy and the Chris Pratt Star-Lord that we have now. It just feels like they're trying way too hard to make him way too funny. He is not as convincing dramatic-wise, and it just feels like he's being goofy for the sake of goofy, and it kind of doesn't really jive well with the rest of the things that are going on. Like, he's still cracking jokes. Like, obviously, everybody's going to quip in this movie because it's a Marvel movie. No matter how serious you get, you're still going to have the jokes there. But the thing that the Russo brothers have done so well that they've established at this point is they're really good at balancing the humor with the drama to not make the humor kind of overpower everything, unless the film is set up to be a straight-up comedy, which none of the films that they've done have been that way. It'd be different if it was like a Guardians or a Thor Ragnarok situation, where that film is obviously established to clearly be a comedy, but in this film, like, it is very clearly a drama. So he sticks out like a sore thumb acting-wise, and it really sucks because Chris Pratt still, to me, is one of the funniest human beings alive, so it really sucks to see him being wasted. But yeah, loved it. Marvel knocked it out of the park. Fantastic job. It deserves every single dollar that it has earned, And I still do believe that this will finally, it's going to be very rare, but I still do believe that this will finally be the film to unseat Avatar as the #1 highest grossing film of all time. So, big thumbs up from me. So that's it. That's kind of like my little review mashup, kind of giving my just quick thoughts on all the movies that I've seen over the last couple months that I didn't get a chance to review. Like I said, I'll be doing more reviews consistently going forward, hopefully for the rest of this year, not just for the summer, hopefully when I'm back at school, but that's not important. Follow me on Twitter at MovieNerdReview. Head on over to my website, MovieNerdReviews.com. Follow me on Instagram at Dominic Rizzi, and also check out my SoundCloud page, Dom81797. Yes, that is what it is. And that's it. I will see you guys next time.